Join us again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jennifer Byrne, and a warm good night.
Is it time to lift border restrictions and allow interstate travel? The differing approaches taken by state premiers.
New South Wales is always open to welcome people from other states. I will always put Queenslanders first, okay? That's my job.
Health authorities also weighing in with the medical advice. Also tonight, badge of honour, why Donald Trump says having the highest number of COVID-19 cases is seen as a good thing. A super cyclone reaches land, impacting millions of people in heavily populated areas of India and Bangladesh. And how this man's parents didn't give up hope in finding their son, abducted as a toddler 32 years ago.
This is SBS World News with Janice Peteresen.
Good evening. Against the backdrop of easing restrictions and more freedoms around the country, the question on when to lift border measures is becoming a real point of contention. Premiers are divided and have today made their views public. It's a juggling act that's playing out how to restart our economy while maintaining the success of curbing the coronavirus. But border control is not the only dispute that our leaders are facing. Chinese state-run media has taken a swipe, saying Australia acts as the dog of the US. Australia's push to have an independent global COVID-19 inquiry contributing to the tensions. Last night, the World Health Assembly voted to have the probe into the pandemic that's killed more than 320,000 people worldwide. Australia makes up 100 of those fatalities. Only 13 new cases reported today. And with positive signs around the nation, the pressure is growing to make the big leap and allow domestic borders to reopen.
Preparing his boat for the first visitors in months as New South Wales announces a restart to regional tourism. Bobby Profilio runs a fishing charter out of Wollongong but hasn't taken a tour since March 22.
The last couple of months have been really tough, having to stop all our bookings. Just going on with nothing's been really, really difficult.
The Premier has extended the invitation to interstate travellers with a thinly veiled attack on other states' border restrictions.
New South Wales is always open to welcome people from other states. We intend to keep our borders open. We think that's best for New South Wales, but also best for Australia. We will play our part as the largest state, as traditionally the economic powerhouse of the nation.
And the other state leaders responded.
And I'm not the only state. Let's be very clear here. Western Australia has a hard border closure. Northern Territory has a border closure. South Australia has a border closure. And Tasmania has a border closure. I will always put Queenslanders first, okay? That's my job.
New South Wales had the Ruby Princess. I mean, seriously? And they're trying to give us advice?
The Deputy Chief Medical Officer says there's no reason for the border closures.
From a medical point of view, I can't see why the borders are still closed, but as I said, that's for the states and territories themselves to decide when that timing is right for them.
Included in the New South Wales announcement are art galleries, libraries and museums, which will also reopen in time for the June long weekend. And the government is working with snow resorts to open for a short ski season. The announcement comes as a Sydney boarding school closed after a student tested positive for COVID-19.
Every time you ease a restriction, we should expect the case numbers to go up, and that's why it's more important than ever to protect the most vulnerable.
In South Australia, there's some movement on restrictions.
From Friday this week, you'll be able to enjoy a meal and a glass of wine indoors up to 10.
And stage 2 has been brought forward to June 5, meaning pubs, cinemas, gyms and beauticians will be able to open a few days earlier than expected. That's the same day as the Northern Territory and weeks earlier than the rest of the nation. Lucy Murray, SBS World News.
And Qantas has revealed how it intends to ensure infectious diseases don't spread on its flights. Later in the bulletin, we'll take a look at the plan and why not everyone is on board. The war of words between China and Australia is escalating as the federal government appeals Beijing's decision to impose tariffs on our barley exports. While the diplomatic effort to ease trade tensions continues, the government maintains it will go to the World Trade Organisation if the dispute isn't resolved.
A war of words as Australian diplomats try to avoid a trade war. After the Chinese embassy yesterday called Australia's claim of a diplomatic win nothing but a joke.
That's a matter for the embassy and for its officials.
State media launched a fresh attack today, describing Australia as a giant kangaroo that serves as a dog of the US. Beijing's imposed an 80% tariff on barley exports, accusing Australia of subsidising farmers and dumping, claims the government rejects.
Probably to appeal at a local level in China, we have 60 days in which to do that. We believe we have a very strong case in which to prosecute that Australian barley farmers are not subsidised.
The government we have encouraged to take China to the World Trade Organisation because any objective analysis will show that there should not be tariffs imposed.
The decision will mean a $600 million hit to the grain growing industry, with reports fruit and seafood exporters could be next.
We will always comply with appropriate requirements for Australian exports, so no matter where they are going. But we would be disappointed if there was any process of conflating these issues.
While not all primary producers are worried, it's reinforced the need to look elsewhere.
All industries are always looking to diversify. We're always looking for more demand.
The economic devastation from COVID-19 also serving as a wake-up call for domestic manufacturing, with the government signalling procurement as a way towards a COVID-safe economy.
There's been, I think, a seismic shift in the thinking of Australian consumers and businesses in relation to their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic.
While dealing with the economic fallout domestically, the government's also extending a hand to its Pacific neighbours.
Thank you.
Up to $100 million in immediate financial assistance to 10 countries in the Pacific, the largest amount going to Papua New Guinea. Pablo Vinales, SBS World News.
Australia has joined a global fight against cyber criminals and state actors targeting medical services during the coronavirus pandemic. Hospitals around the world are believed to have confronted malicious hacking attacks to infiltrate computer systems and impair their operations. International concern about the threat registered at the United Nations comes after authorities in the United States accused Chinese hackers of trying to steal vaccine research. China has rejected the assertion as rumour and slander. Well, the government has strongly defended its push for a probe into the origins of COVID-19. Overnight, the World Health Assembly unanimously agreed to the proposal, but it's not without detractors.
More than 130 countries co-sponsored an inquiry into the origins of COVID-19, including China, but Canberra was quick to claim credit.
Australia has helped provide the impetus and the resolve to ensure that we have an impartial, independent and comprehensive evaluation.
The resolution calls for an investigation of not only the source of the virus, but also of the World Health Organisation's handling of the pandemic.
WHO remains fully committed to transparency, accountability and continuous improvement.
But there's no detail yet on who will be in charge, what oversight will be in place and when it'll get underway. The WHO says it'll be held at the earliest appropriate moment, and Beijing argues that distinction makes the final motion very different to Australia's original urgent timeline, leading to this strongly worded warning.
最后我想强调，如果澳方愿意改弦更张，根据世卫大会有关决议案，彻底放弃对疫情的政治操弄，回到国际社会的普遍共识上来，我们对此是欢迎的。
The health minister strident in his defence.
We focus on Bendigo, not Beijing or Boston. Our decisions are made in the interests of Australian citizens.
Australia's strained relations with our largest trading partner overshadowed by the escalating tension between China and the US. President Donald Trump once again dispensing with diplomatic niceties.
I'm very disappointed in China.
And repeating threats to withdraw America's funding and membership of the World Health Organization.
Basically, they have to clean up their act. They have to do a better job. They have to be much more fair to other countries, including the United States, or we're not going to be involved with them anymore. We'll do it a separate way.
But analysts say that will backfire and only serve to make China look like the good global citizen.
The President of the United States has, given China and its president a gift. And it's a gift that is a particularly harmful one.
In another marked difference, China has pledged to share its vaccine developments with the rest of the world, something the US has rejected. Either way, the WHO resolution has been slammed for not guaranteeing the so-called people's vaccine.
Put simply, if somebody finds the cure, are they obliged to share it? Now, we have mechanisms, public health mechanisms globally that allow us to lay down those expectations, but the moment is now.
Otherwise, Oxfam says commercial interest will be put ahead of the public good. Catalina Flores, SBS World News.
The devastating economic impact of the coronavirus has again been made evident, with unemployment in the UK reaching its highest point in almost 24 years. The number of Britons claiming unemployment support jumped by over 856,000 to a total of 2.1 million people. That's up 69% from March. The British government is also paying 80% of the wages of 8 million employees stood down during the pandemic. Those workers are not counted as unemployed. Spain's government will ask Parliament for a 2-week extension to the nation's state of emergency. The country's COVID-19 outbreak, the 5th deadliest worldwide, has been showing signs of easing, but the Prime Minister wants the emergency powers extended until the end of June, when it's expected the nationwide lockdown will be largely wound back. And Hong Kong is also set to extend its measures for another 2 weeks. It means the city's annual vigil commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre could be disrupted. Every year on June 4, tens of thousands of people join a candlelight vigil to mark the event. But current restrictions limit public gatherings to a total of 8 people. A day after admitting he's taking an unproven drug against the coronavirus, US President Donald Trump is defending the fact that his country has the highest number of cases in the world. The president calling it a badge of honour. Almost 92,000 Americans have died from the virus, 1,500 in the past 24 hours.
Near the steps of San Francisco's City Hall, the first officially sanctioned homeless encampment established to prevent a potentially catastrophic coronavirus outbreak. San Francisco's homeless crisis has been exacerbated by COVID-19. This camp, a chance to better protect the most vulnerable. Across 17 US states, infection rates are still rising. And with 1.5 million confirmed cases, America's figures are the worst in the world. The president, though, spinning it differently.
If we were testing 1 million people instead of 14 million people, we would have far fewer cases, right? So I view it as a badge of honor.
President Trump also doubling down over his admission that he's taking daily doses of hydroxychloroquine. His own experts warn there's no evidence the anti-malaria drug is effective against coronavirus and may cause heart problems.
It's gotten a bad reputation only because I'm promoting it, so I'm obviously a very bad promoter. If anybody else were promoting it, they'd say this is the greatest thing ever.
Democrats say he's setting a bad example.
That is reckless. Please, citizens of America, don't take hydroxychloroquine.
That warning amplified following the results of a new study testing hydroxychloroquine at veterans' hospitals. The death rate for patients who took the drug found to be more than double that of those who didn't.
If you look at the one survey, the only bad survey, they were giving it to people that were in very bad shape. They were very old, almost dead. It was a Trump enemy statement.
Doubts also being raised over a separate drug hailed yesterday as a potential game changer. Biotech company Moderna claimed its vaccine trial showed promising early signs, with all 8 patients administered the drug, producing antibodies that fight the virus. But a leading health publication has questioned the validity of the results, causing shares in Moderna and on Wall Street as a whole to slump. Omar Den, SBS World News.
Coming up next, the new finding on whether you can be infected with COVID-19 more than once. Also inside Italy's aged care homes and how the elderly have been hardest hit by COVID-19. And how one missed flight has divided this family for months.
Tonight at 7:30, Tony Robinson will take you to the burial place of novelist Jane Austen in Britain's cathedrals. Then Mike Rylance explores the story of his grandfather, who spent 4 years as a Japanese prisoner of war in My Grandparents' War. Then at 9:25, Reprisal.
Good morning, ladies. Cheers. I hope this works, because I'm real hungry.
A cinematic journey of isolation, survival and healing. The Beach, Friday 29th of May on SBS, NITV and On Demand.
He lied to get into the army. That's quite a shock. Indefinite imprisonment.
Bert Newton in the new season of Who Do You Think You Are? Tuesday 7:30 on SBS and On Demand.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
Does your energy provider chip in for your internet? Dodo does. Yep, we're an energy company and an internet company, which is why you get unlimited data on our NBN 50 plan for just $60 a month when you also get electricity and gas. Switch at dodo.com.
We remain dedicated to helping Australians. We've introduced a help program with a range of relief options to assist customers currently in need. Call us to find out how we can tailor help options for you.
For stepping up in tough times, for doing the little things, for keeping your distance and your sense of humour, for the courage you've shown and protecting your community. Thanks, Australia. The changes to stop the coronavirus aren't easy, but they're working. Keep going. And don't forget to download the COVID Safe app today. Together, we're stopping the spread. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Bill Clinton was somebody we could work with.
Clinton was our answer to Reagan.
I ask you to join with us in a reunited States.
I think I have a real story for you now.
I was completely at his mercy. We were both cautious, but not cautious enough.
Mr. President, your testimony is subject to penalty of perjury.
I was scared and I felt really responsible.
The Clinton Affair starts Sunday 8:30 on SBS and On Demand.
Now more than ever, we need to look out for each other and keep our communities safe.
From comprehensive analysis weekly on The Point and daily updates on NITV News, we'll bring you all the latest information on coronavirus that affects our mob.
If you think you're unwell, don't delay getting advice.
Now we need to learn how to be adaptive.
We are all in this together, aren't we?
It's about ringing up, seeing if people are okay.
We really need to continue the connection.
The Point tonight, 8:30 on NITV.
Millions of people are still in the path of Super Cyclone Amphan as it moves across the Bay of Bengal with heavy rainfall and destructive winds. The Category 5 cyclone is crossing land in northeastern India and heading towards Bangladesh and Bhutan.
Super Cyclone Amphan's early impact in Odisha province was first felt on the coast. Wind speeds recorded in excess of 100 kilometres an hour in the seaport of Paradeep. on their way to predicted tops of 185 kilometres an hour. The ferocity as it moved inland, sending debris down roadways. Drivers soon abandoning their vehicles to seek refuge. Places of worship considered a safer option for many. More than 1,700 shelters have been set up in Odisha alone, with almost 120,000 people evacuated. Coronavirus concerns ignored in buildings which were recently used for testing and treating COVID-19. The scale of what's currently unfolding as the cyclone moves towards Bangladesh, something not seen in the region for more than 20 years.
Started getting reports about a lot of damages happening to the infrastructure. So the losses have started, to be reported now. I can talk about one district, which is Bhadrak in Odisha, from where I have reports of extensive damages.
34 emergency response teams have been deployed, mainly in West Bengal. In Bangladesh, there are fears up to 1.4 million people may be displaced, with 600,000 homes in imminent danger. The cyclone brings with it a storm surge hitting the coast.
We are now hearing that the tide would be 4 to 6 meters high, and that the water might gush in 25 kilometers onto the land, which will then mean that there would be widespread salinity on very fertile lands.
Further emergency help hindered, with Kolkata Airport being shut for safety reasons. John Baldock, SBS World News.
South Korean analysis suggests that people who test positive a second time for coronavirus, despite having already recovered, aren't being reinfected. The finding comes as samples collected from supposedly reinfected patients appear to be clear of infectious viruses. This finding hints that diagnostic tests may instead be picking up on the genetic material from dead viruses, suggesting COVID-19 is not reactivating. Well, many clinical trials in Australia have been put on pause because of the coronavirus, but they've been given a boost. Shortly, we look at some of the studies set to benefit and what it means for those living with the illnesses. The coronavirus pandemic has delivered a devastating blow to the global maritime industry. More than 20,000 Filipinos who work on ships have been repatriated, while thousands more remain stranded on board after losing their jobs. The money that workers normally would send home is drying up, and the government says it's having a terrible impact on the economy.
Kevin Curativo was a waiter and an entertainer for an international cruise ship for over 8 years. He was earning more than enough to provide for his family in the Mindanao region. But the coronavirus pandemic changed all that. He was repatriated and now under quarantine for over a month in Manila, with no clear idea as to what the future holds.
You feel stressed, you feel like you're going home, but you cannot because of those things that you experience from this crisis. It's really hard because, you miss your family. In times of this, you need to have this strength for them.
More than 20,000 Filipinos who work on ships abroad have returned home since the coronavirus pandemic began. Many remain stranded in hotels, while others are held up on their cruise ships, anchored off Manila Harbor. The Philippine Coast Guard is testing thousands of them in Manila. Those who test negative are given clearance and assistance to go back to their communities, while those who test positive are turned over to health officials. But thousands more Filipinos are believed to have been stranded abroad at international ports, where they were prohibited from disembarking.
We are torn here. At the same time, we are blessed because we have a work here. We are earning money. But on the other part of us, we are wishing that we are already home and with our family. We are waiting for the world to return back to normal.
The Philippines provides a quarter of the workforce of the global maritime industry. Many work in merchant ships, ferrying more than 90% of global supplies. And in the Philippines, their contribution is invaluable. Filipino seafarers are the country's most prized exports. They send back at least $6 billion of remittances every year. That's about 10% of the country's gross domestic product. The street in Manila used to be full of aspiring workers looking for jobs on ships overseas. Now it's been reduced to this, a place where their dreams for a better life are put on hold, at least for now.
Brazil has recorded its highest daily coronavirus death toll, with 1,179 fatalities overnight. The pandemic has killed almost 18,000 people in the country, and there are concerns for the ill patients in the Amazon, with doctors saying there's been a significant increase in the number being airlifted from there since the start of the pandemic.
Inside this plane, there's a critically ill COVID-19 patient.
Alessandro.
He's a member of an indigenous tribe who live in Brazil's Amazon rainforest. He's been airlifted to Manaus, one of the few cities in Amazonas state with intensive care beds.
Every day, 2 planes are going out. One is for normal patients and the other is for COVID patients. Sometimes you don't have a normal patient, but we have a patient with COVID. Airlifts for COVID patients have gone up a lot. It's gone up 60% for removals.
Latest figures show there are more than 500 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among 40 tribes. Many indigenous people have gone into voluntary isolation, barricading roads to protect their villages from the pandemic. But the disease is spreading quickly.
There is a great movement of people from interior to Manaus. We had brought up to 8 coronavirus patients per day.
Even before the coronavirus crisis, Brazil's indigenous people say they were in a struggle for survival. They say President Jair Bolsonaro has stripped them of their rights and dismantled environmental protections, opening the Amazon's mineral riches for more commercial exploitation. COVID-19 is an additional threat at a time of heightened tension. The tribes say they don't have the resources needed to fight the disease.
We have an underdeveloped interior. 4 or 5 cities have intensive care units and many of them are not operational. Those in the rest of the interior, those in underdeveloped areas, are trying to get to Manaus, and we could see a new wave of crowded hospitals, fights for vacancies, an intense situation.
Human rights groups warn that illegal miners and loggers in the Amazon rainforest are exploiting the pandemic, and that the government is ignoring or even encouraging illegal land seizures at a time when indigenous people are most vulnerable.
The Prime Minister of the small African country of Lesotho has resigned 3 months after he was named as a suspect in the murder of his ex-wife. 80-year-old Thomas Tabane was one of the leading political figures in Lesotho. The country was thrown into political turmoil in February when Tabane's current wife was charged with the 2017 assassination of the former First Lady. Tabane's resignation comes after public pressure from his party to resign. The couple deny any involvement in the killing. The opposing sides in the Syrian civil war have agreed to meet in Geneva to continue negotiations on the constitution. Fighting in the region has eased since March when Turkey agreed to a ceasefire with Russia. The UN's special envoy to Syria has urged the United States and Russia to back the peace process. Italy's northern Lombardy region has been hit hard by COVID-19 and is only now beginning to reopen. The virus has devastated Lombardy's nursing homes, with many elderly patients dying alone.
The lockdown is over in the cemetery of Nembro in northern Italy. Giacomo Boffelli succumbed to coronavirus on the 11th of March, but only now can family and friends say farewell. Her voice breaking, his daughter, Nicoletta, says goodbye. But we never abandoned you. We never would, she says, because you'll always be in our hearts. This community in the foothills of the Alps suffered one of Italy's highest per capita death tolls. The average age of those who died from coronavirus in Italy is 80. For the town of Nembro, the month of March was a month of daily death. You just need to look at the death notices here. This woman died on the 7th of March. This man died on the 8th of March. This woman died on the 7th of March. This woman on the 9th of March. This man on the 7th. It's been more than a month since any COVID deaths have occurred here. Now relatives can visit their loved ones again at a distance. But the situation remains precarious for the elderly in Milan's nursing homes, where the death toll has been described as a massacre. She's also dying without oxygen because we don't have machines, says a nurse who shot this cell phone video. We muffled her voice because she fears for her job. As the pandemic intensified, the staff at the Palazzolo nursing home assured Carla Porfirio every day her 85-year-old mother Michela was fine. On Sunday, April 5th, Carla called the nursing home. They said her mother was on oxygen and morphine. The next day, Michela died. What's so tragic, says Carla, for those of us who lost our loved ones, we didn't have the possibility not just to see them for more than a month, but we also couldn't be close to them in their last days as they suffered. They needed the hand of their loved ones. And not just that, we couldn't even hold funerals.
Loro avevano bisogno di questa mano del proprio caro.
As the pandemic intensified, the Lombardy regional government asked nursing homes to accept COVID patients, which may have contributed to the high mortality rates in the homes. The regional government declined our request for comment, responding that the matter is under investigation. Alessandro Azzoni's mother, Marisa, was in Milan's Trivulzio care home. She's now in hospital with coronavirus in critical condition. He shows me how sections of her care home, marked in red, were turned into COVID wards. Alessandro has founded a group demanding an investigation into nursing homes.
Persone che vanno rimesse al centro.
The elderly, says Alessandro, are part of society with a memory. They gave us life. We can't just throw them away.
Alla memoria.
In a corner of Milan's main cemetery, more than 120 fresh graves. Here, too, most were old, most were in nursing homes. This is where the unclaimed dead from coronavirus are buried. Unclaimed because many of them had no family. They died alone with no one to mourn their passing. Small plastic crosses mark the end of lives lost.
Temporary visa holders stuck overseas are calling on the Australian government to reveal the criteria by which it allows exemptions to the travel ban. Thousands are joining a campaign to pressure the government to open the borders for visa holders to return to jobs, homes and families in Australia.
Ryan!
For 3 months, this has been the only way Dinesh Gori has been able to see his children.
Zara missing Baba? You can see all around the toys of my kids are here, but no one is here to play with them.
His wife returned to Pakistan after her father was diagnosed with cancer. When the travel bans came into force, they immediately tried to fly home, missing a connecting flight by just 2.5 hours before the borders shut.
2.5 hours changed the entire life of my family.
1-year-old Zara is due for an immunisation. 2-year-old Mohammed Rayan needs to be enrolled in kindergarten, but the family is unsure of what the future holds.
My daughter, the first thing she says when she wakes up is Baba, Baba, calling her father.
Dinesh has applied 4 times for special consideration to allow his family to come home. 4 times they've been rejected.
As a rule, we've closed our borders to everybody other than Australians.
Since December, the Department of Home Affairs has received over 1,300 applications for special consideration from non-citizens to come here. It's rejected about 20% as they don't meet the criteria. But what that criteria actually entails is unknown.
We need to have the public release of all criteria against which applications are assessed.
Senator McKim writing to the minister on behalf of thousands joining a social media campaign claiming to be stuck overseas, separated from their lives and their families in Australia, like Sydney couple Gonzalo Zabaleta and wife Luia Carrero, currently in Colombia. Their visas are due to expire in a few weeks, leaving them in danger of losing their home and the life they were building in Australia.
They closed all the borders. From this day, life changed because we are desperate to come back home.
Dinesh offering to pay the 2 weeks in a hotel to quarantine his family if only he can get his children back.
We are a really devastating family. We need someone help.
Abby Dinham, SBS World News.
A new report has found a staggering disparity between the mental health of young Australians living with disability and those who don't. And advocates say they're struggling even more amid the coronavirus pandemic.
I used to tell the other kids I was a secret agent, and these were my gadgets.
Melbourne filmmaker Amy Marks says she's always telling people she's okay.
You assume I'm overcoming some great struggle, but really, I'm just getting a snack.
Bubbly and confident, the 23-year-old who has cerebral palsy admits she wasn't always like this.
Constantly being faced with that barrier of activities that I couldn't do really negatively impacted my mental health.
Young people with disability are more likely to have mental health issues and are twice as likely to be bullied than those without disability. New data by Christian charity Mission Australia has revealed.
Young people with disability are overrepresented in statistics of need, perhaps vulnerability and deprivation in Australia.
Of those surveyed, 2 in 5 young people with disability have been bullied in the past 12 months, double those without disability. Nearly half are concerned about their mental health, compared to about 30% of their peers. And about a quarter of young people with disability have thought about suicide.
We're not surprised by these results, and sadly they are true of what we know. And we know that the COVID situation has actually made it worse.
But the report also indicated a brighter future for young people with disability. More than 80% are engaged in education, and nearly half plan to go to university.
We're trying to put disabled young people in a box, but actually we often share those hopes, those dreams, those aspirations with everybody else because we're people.
We really need to make sure that schools have high expectations for students with disability, and then we need to make sure that education systems like TAFEs and university are fully inclusive. And finally, we need employers to employ young people with disability.
Where you see difference, I see adventure.
Charlotte Lamb, SBS World News.
Australian researchers are set to share $400 million in federal funding for the discovery of new treatments for many common serious health conditions. It's hoped the funding boost will help restart hundreds of clinical trials which have been put on hold due to the pandemic.
When Professor Alan Cheng applied for a government grant to further his research into influenza vaccines last year, he had no idea a global pandemic was about to begin. His study is one of 267 projects set to receive a share in $400 million from the National Health and Medical Research Council.
The system that I'm involved with is already monitoring for cases of COVID, and we're able to evaluate any vaccine that might come out after it's deployed to see how effective it is.
The government says while some of the research will help in the fight against COVID-19, many projects will focus on preventing and treating common illnesses, including cancer, heart disease and mental health issues.
Examples such as the University of New South Wales, $620,000 for research into youth mental health.
Those living with chronic health conditions have welcomed the funding boost. 7-year-old Kushagra Singh is one of only 20 people in Australia with FOXG1 syndrome, a rare genetic condition affecting development. His family says they're determined to help find a cure.
He was the 259th in the world, the 5th in Sydney to be diagnosed. Really it was difficult to just ask anybody any questions.
Mr. Singer is one of a growing number who've signed up for Health Match, a new platform connecting patients with clinical trials. The service has seen a 20% rise in applications this year from people willing to help find treatments for COVID-19 and other conditions.
We're seeing a few of these trials starting to restart now that things are looking to go back to normal, but a lot of these trials have actually had to pause due to the current situation.
Mr. Singer says he's hopeful new genomics technologies will help accelerate clinical trials of treatments for rare diseases. Cassandra Bain, SBS World News.
One 15-year-old boy is dead and another has fronted court after an alleged stabbing incident in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Northern Territory correspondent Anita Bolle filed this report.
A 15-year-old teenager has been charged with murder after an altercation here in Bagot, an Indigenous community near Darwin Airport. Northern Territory Police responded just after 3 o'clock yesterday morning, where another 15-year-old was taken to hospital after being stabbed. Police later said he sadly passed away. The accused has today faced a youth justice court via video link. His father and relatives appeared in court to support him. The Bagot community has taken to social media to pay their respects, but the media has been asked to keep their distance. The matter has been adjourned to July 1st.
Anita Bolle reporting there. Well, the aviation sector is looking to the future as the coronavirus pandemic grounds the industry. SBS Finance editor Ricardo Gonçalves joins me now with more. So, Ricardo, what additional measures might people who want to fly face when they get to the airport?
Janice, I spoke to Sydney Airport today, which said while no decision has been made, it is continuing to discuss with industry about the use of temperature checks at airports. It is, however, seeking evidence-based solutions, but if implemented, concedes it may increase costs for passengers. Qantas tells me it is open to the idea. It comes as Australia's largest airport welcomed just 92,000 passengers internationally and domestically in April, a decline of 97.5%, and that compares with almost 4 million in its peak month of October.
Qantas wants its planes back in the air and believes it's safe to do so without implementing social distancing measures.
The medical advice and the medical evidence shows that there's a very low risk of transmission of COVID-19.
The airline says hospital-grade filters will remove 99.9% of viruses on its flights every 5 minutes.
There are very specific engineering things that happen in relation to the ventilation on aircraft and so forth, which can make it safer than a closed room, for example. Probably not as safe as an outdoor cafe.
Passengers won't be allowed on board if they are showing signs of an illness. They will also be offered masks, but it won't be mandatory to wear them. But some travellers remain concerned about the lack of distancing.
Not really. A little bit more distance, I feel more comfortable.
There's been no known cases of transmission on an aircraft, and we think that's probably one of the safest environments.
The Transport Workers Union has slammed the move. It's called on the government to implement a national COVID safety plan for the aviation industry.
We can't have a situation where Qantas continually describes the risk of contracting the coronavirus as extremely low and puts out fanciful statements about well-being as if we're in some sort of yoga retreat.
Data released today shows that domestic traveller numbers here at Sydney Airport fell by 97.5% last month. Just 49,000 people passed through the domestic terminals. 12 months ago, 2.3 million people landed and departed here on domestic flights. Qantas hopes to entice travellers with airfares as low as $19. But there are concerns corporate travel won't return to previous levels.
Domestic business travel is going to be severely crimped because it's just so easy with reliable fast broadband, with applications like Zoom. It's so easy to be able to meet people virtually face to face and still get business done.
Adrian Archuli, SBS World News.
While most passenger flights remain grounded, there's been a spike in demand for charter services. Alliance Aviation says charter revenue is the strongest it's been in years, with demand largely driven by mining companies for their FIFO workers. Shares closed 23% stronger. Panic buying is well and truly over, with retail sales recording its biggest monthly fall ever. Preliminary figures from the Bureau of Statistics reveal a 17.9% decline in turnover in April. That follows a record increase in the previous month there. Food retailing saw the biggest fall, down just over 17% in the month, although compared with the same time last year, it is still 5% higher.
Certainly says the economy isn't in great shape. And we really know that from unemployment, GDP, those kinds of things. And it also means that we're going to try and dig ourselves out of a hole.
Meantime, Myer will reopen another 9 stores from Friday, bringing the total number to 24. The Bureau says 10% of all retail sales were made online. And with more people turning to the internet amid COVID-19, the telecommunications industry ombudsman says complaints are on the rise. All up, residential consumers and small businesses made more than 32,000 complaints about phone and internet services in the March quarter. That is 13% higher than the previous 3 months. Now, that period takes into account the extreme weather events like bushfires and floods experienced early in the year. But with more people now working from home and relying on the internet, the Ombudsman says contacting your provider should be your first port of call if there's an issue.
And if it is an unreasonable wait, and if you've tried, given it a good crack of talking to your provider, give us a call and we'll see what we can do.
Faults and connection complaints formed 50% of the total complaints in the March quarter. The Australian share market made an impressive recovery today. Despite opening 1% weaker, the market turned late in the morning and gradually climbed to finish 2% or 0.2% firmer, making for a 4-day winning streak. The banks did well. The miners gave back some of their recent gains following a run on the iron ore price. Tech stocks rose the most. EML Payments a standout, and TPG rose as it proposed to split into two, with the larger company merging with Vodafone. One Australian dollar buying nearly 65.5 US cents. And even though the dollar's high as Janice, overseas travel is unlikely for some time yet.
That is spot on. Thank you, Ricardo, once again for being on the money. Well, the first major report looking at how the COVID-19 global shutdown has affected our carbon emissions is being released. It shows a never-before-seen drop, but scientists are concerned at how much we're still emitting, even during the shutdown.
Kate Coleman's workday has changed massively in the past few months, starting with her daily commute.
It's maybe 40 minutes door to door, so that's good, but I'm loving not having to deal with peak hour traffic at the start and end of each day.
Ditching the drive has had a huge impact on global emissions, according to the CSIRO's Dr. Pep Canadell, who's investigated how much emissions might drop this year compared to last year.
We see that the overall year will see a decline anywhere between 4 and 7%.
Globally, emissions fell significantly in February. There was a bump in March when China began to ease restrictions. But on April 7, the drop was 17% due to a lack of cars, trucks, trains and shipping, followed by the shutdown of industry and the drop in demand for energy and aviation.
The 17% daily decline that we found in early April is absolutely unprecedented in the record.
The amount of CO2 emitted during the April shutdown was similar to the amount emitted in April 2006, showing just how much we've increased our dependence on fossil fuel energy in the past 14 years. The drop in emissions was even more significant in Australia. For most of April, it's believed carbon emissions were 28% lower than last year, but emissions from our homes are on the rise. That means larger bills, which may present new issues for some of the country's most vulnerable.
Look, April showed a significant increase. We know as we head into winter, as we head into that June quarter, the reality is people are going to choose between do they put food on the table, do they put the lights on?
Scientists say the emission reductions we'll see globally this year are close to what we need every year to stop global warming. Something to think about when we're given the green light for the new normal. Rachel Carey, SBS World News.
Coming up next, using virtual reality to help treat the sick and injured. Could technology like this help protect frontline workers from infectious patients? And kidnapped as a toddler, now reunited after 32 years. The story behind this man's quest to meet his biological parents.
Tonight at 7:30, Tony Robinson will take you to the burial place of novelist Jane Austen in Britain's cathedrals. Then Mike Rylance explores the story of his grandfather, who spent 4 years as a Japanese prisoner of war in My Grandparents' War. Then at 9:25, Reprisal.
Hello everyone, I'm from China. I am living in Perth now. I heard coronavirus about 2 months ago when I had my holiday in Fujian, China. I realized serious when I know more and more people be killed. I feel very good when I'm coming home to Australia. I am very worried if more people get infected in the next few months. It looks like China has gotten through the worst. That gives me hope.
I never want you to go through what Michael's family did after his accident.
I know. So maybe it's time we get life insurance.
Yeah, and I've heard good things about real insurance.
Okay, let's do one simple thing and give them a call.
With real life insurance in place, your family would receive a cash payment up to $1 million if you pass away. It's cover your family can count on from an award-winning insurer you can trust. Call 137 081 or search Real Life Insurance.
Easy on yourself.
Did you know there's a paint that absorbs CO2 as it dries? Painting with Ecosphere is like transforming your home into a tree. Now that's a breath of fresh air.
Better get to Crowy's, because at Crowy's, we know paint.
Slowly, we're getting there. Things are changing. And so are possibilities. We're all anticipating our next move. You're ready, and so are we, with every Lexus dealership and service centre open.
Work is shut. Shops are closed. Friends and family are off limits. You feel like you're completely shut off from everything. But once the COVID-19 crisis has passed, you know you'll be able to reconnect with everyone. But not if, like me, you live with dementia. People living with dementia are often socially isolated all day, every day. It's not a virus, it's discrimination. Help keep the world open for us.
Now listen to what I'm telling you. If you want to make money, there's ways to do it.
We're not drug dealers.
I saved this family. Laws are for cowards.
It's time you got into the family business.
000. Tomorrow 9:30 on SBS and on demand.
Do you trust me?
Escape with the SBS World Movies Wanderlust collection.
Welcome aboard.
De ahora en adelante solo confiaremos en la poderosa.
Wow. Right?
Yeah,
great.
amazing.
What are you waiting for?
The Wanderlust collection continues with The Motorcycle Diaries, tonight 9:45 on SBS World Movies.
A Chinese man who was abducted as a toddler in China's northwest Shaanxi province has been reunited with his parents after their decades-long search. Mao Yin was aged just 2.5 when he was snatched in 1988 while walking home from daycare with his father. The breakthrough came in late April, with police receiving information about a boy from Xi'an who had been sold to a family just over 600 kilometres away. Authorities used facial recognition technology to help with the search. NRL great Greg Inglis will come out of retirement to take up a one-year deal with Super League team Warrington Wolves in 2021. The 33-year-old retired in April last year and has been working as a pathways manager with the Rabbitohs. Inglis took on the role in order to earn the $1.5 million still owing on his playing contract. He'll join former Wallaby Israel Folau and All Black Sonny Bill Williams in the competition. Inglis says he still has a point to prove after long-running injury issues.
You know, there's one thing that I like doing is proving people wrong. But now I've got that drive, I've got that mentality back in my head that that I can deliver.
I think this bit of time off is giving himself time to heal all those little niggly injuries, and I don't think they would have signed him and I don't think he would have signed if he didn't think he could perform.
Inglis played 263 NRL games, 32 origins for the Maroons and 39 tests for the Kangaroos. The English Premier League restart has received another setback after 6 positive coronavirus results across 3 clubs. A player and 2 staff members from Watford are among those who'll self-isolate for 7 days. All 20 clubs had already agreed to return to non-contact training following the league's suspension in March. Officials still hope to return to action late next month. Frontline medical staff around the world have been widely praised for risking their health to attend to infectious patients. But is there a way for them to be better protected? Well, for one London hospital, the solution may be in virtual reality.
Can we have a look at John's x-ray, please? Is that all right?
This is a ward round with a difference. Those hand gestures are controlling a mixed reality headset. The doctor can bring up x-rays and scans.
Thank you very much.
And the rest of the medical team can stay in a non-COVID area, sharing a live feed of everything he sees.
It allows me to get up-to-date information from the rest of the team, even though they're not next to me. Initially, it felt a little bit bizarre and a bit odd, but actually, if I compared it to the PPE and the visors and the goggles that I was wearing beforehand, it's probably more comfortable. And to be honest, I forget that I'm wearing it most of the time.
John fell off a roof and fractured his spine. He was only found to have COVID-19 after being admitted to hospital. His complex injuries require lots of expert input.
It just seems quite a good thing that you can have all those amount of people in the same room in one person when it's just a contagious thing that no one knows the beginnings or the ends of it. They're not only saving me, I'm not passing anything on to any one of them and their friends.
Surgeons here have been using mixed reality headsets in theatre for 3 years. With the arrival of a highly contagious new virus, they quickly saw the potential of a device that relies on hand gestures and voice commands rather than touch. As well as reducing staff exposure to coronavirus, it's also cut the amount of personal protective equipment being used. But does the headset have a future beyond the pandemic?
This is not a gimmick. It provides clinicians with capabilities that they cannot have with any other platform that have immediate patient benefit. So I don't see this technology going anywhere. In fact, if anything, I see this being much more widely deployed.
I thought Doctor Who. I thought, yeah, it was quite interesting because it was the first time seeing it.
St Mary's and 4 other NHS hospitals are using the headset on COVID wards, and so far patients have welcomed the arrival of digitally enhanced doctors.
Well, coming up, the weather details and the fundraising hero that captured global hearts gets another accolade.
Uncover how this mega settlement became the mega city we know today.
We'll reveal the crucial events that changed the very size of London.
London, 2,000 years of history. Sunday, 7:30 on SBS and On Demand.
And we are ready to go.
Monday at 7, Nigella Lawson shares her tips on how to create delicious food at home.
And this is how easy it is. Open a jar. A little oil in the pan, 4 tablespoons of capers, a bit of a stir. They cook incredibly fast. Beautiful. Comforting, elegant, fast.
Nigella Express starts Monday at 7 on SBS Food and On Demand.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
As Australia moves to the NBN, now is the time to join an award-winning provider with service and performance that's out of this world. Turn to TPG. Get unlimited data with phone line for $59.99 a month. With more than 1.8 million broadband customers, our group is the second largest internet provider in Australia, connecting you to the internet.
tpg.com.au.
At Coles, we're helping lower the cost of your dinner with some of the key ingredients for delicious beef and thyme burgers, like Coles brioche buns, 4-pack, just $2.70 every day, and Coles frozen chips 1 kilo pack, down to $1.90. With Coles beef and thyme burgers on Mix Match and Save, any of these 2 packs for just $12. For more great recipes and weekly specials, sign up for the digital catalogue at coles.com.au. Coles, good things, great value.
Long day, mate. Yeah,
but she'll be right.
Bang, wide awake again.
On Insight,
It really is effective.
how to get a better night's sleep.
Things which work are being ignored.
Amazingly effective.
It was literally life-changing.
On Dateline. Earlier this year, Britain's knife crimes were a national crisis. As COVID-19 lockdown restrictions start to ease, police fear a deadly resurgence. Insight and Dateline, now streaming on SBS On Demand.
A cinematic journey of isolation, survival and healing. The Beach, Friday 29th of May on SBS, NITV and On Demand.
To the weather details now, and a cold front is moving over Tasmania and Victoria with some thunderstorm activity over eastern Bass Strait. High-level cloud originating from Western Australia stretches over much of the Northern Territory, reaching northern parts of South Australia and New South Wales. This easterly flow also generating cloud cover over parts of northern Queensland. In the major centres, grey skies for Adelaide and Hobart, a few showers to soak Canberra, Brisbane and Darwin, showers easing in Melbourne and rain developing in Sydney, sunny skies for Perth. Further afield, a fine one for Auckland, partly cloudy in Wellington, Christchurch and Noumea. To Southeast Asia now, thunderstorms in Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur and Tempasar. Rain ahead for Phnom Penh. Let's head further north. Wet weather ahead for Hong Kong and Taipei. Some thunder to roar through Beijing. Grey in Hanoi and Shanghai. Heading west, windy in Delhi, clear skies in Baghdad, partly cloudy in Islamabad and Mumbai. To Europe now, overcast skies in Berlin and Rome, scattered showers in London and Paris, bright skies in Athens. To Africa, thunder on the way for Lagos, partly cloudy in Casablanca and Dakar, sunny and bright in Algiers. In South America, thunder on the way for Buenos Aires and Panama City, some showers in Bogota, clear skies for Rio. And finally for North America, fine and clear in New York and Toronto, showers to hit Mexico City and Havana. Well, a British Army veteran who raised over $60 million for healthcare workers before his 100th birthday is to be honoured with a knighthood. Colonel Tom Moore received a special nomination for the honour from British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The honour has been approved by none other than the Queen. Well, if you were planning on experiencing Africa's Big Five this year, Sofa Safari is probably just about as close as you're going to get. In Kenya, wildlife rangers and conservationists are using social media to bring virtual safaris to anyone, anywhere across the globe.
We are live at Ol Pejeta Conservancy's Sofa Safari.
The beauty and majesty of Kenya's iconic wildlife in real time through the lens of a smartphone.
So that's a natural watering hole, and it's actually used by so many animals.
Sofa Safari, bringing the African experience to living rooms around the world.
You're very much welcome to Ol Pejeta.
People can't come here at the moment, so we're trying to take wildlife and the wilderness experience that we offer to our visitors who can't come here at the moment. We're trying to take it from here to them wherever they happen to be across the planet.
International travel restrictions imposed as part of coronavirus shutdowns has left a gaping hole in the operations of Kenya's Ol Pejeta Conservancy. Tourism accounts for over half of the Conservancy's income, with people and money drying up. Staff have had to come up with creative ways to raise funds, crucial to wildlife conservation. Ol Pejeta's inhabitants include the last two surviving northern white rhinos on the planet, both females. The last surviving male died in 2018.
Still so many things that need to be done for this species. They're unable to reproduce naturally now. So we need to raise as much funds and awareness for the in vitro fertilisation that we will hopefully carry out soon with them.
The live broadcasts on Facebook and Instagram are a way to both maintain visitor interest and raise critical funds. While they're free to watch, viewers are encouraged to financially contribute.
Jojo, well done.
Abby O'Brien, SBS World News.
We're recapping our top stories now, and tensions are rising among state premiers over border closures. Federal authorities say there are no health reasons to keep borders sealed. Both Queensland and Western Australia warn they'll be among the last restrictions lifted. And Category 5 cyclone Amphan has made landfall, wreaking havoc and threatening millions of people. That is the world this Wednesday. If you missed any of tonight's bulletin, you can catch up on the SBS News website shortly. But Virginia Langerberg will be back with our next bulletin at 10:25. From the team, good night.
Hello, my name is Josh Kirsch. So last week we began the festival of Pesach, but we kick it off with a Seder. The whole family come and sit together and really reflect on what it means for us to be Jews who are now free. We made the decision to do something with Zoom. My cousin suggested we include video of my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2012. He was a Holocaust survivor, and these were like old digital camera recordings just of him sitting and like really leading and being a part of the Seder. To have him participating there, reading from that Haggadah I could see on video was just so special and so moving. I think to know that he had a family that was keeping those traditions alive after what he went through, I suspect that was probably really meaningful for him.
Britain's cathedrals, majestic, magnificent, monumental. For more than 1400 years, they've dominated Britain's landscape. Never out of sight, never out of mind. Epic structures, they represent our history and the changing fortunes of a nation. I'm Tony Robinson, and in this series, I'll be exploring 6 of Britain's greatest cathedrals. What a privilege. Their stories of rivalry and royalty. Henry was determined to strip the church of its power. Of struggles and sacrifice. Who will rid me of this troublesome priest? Of martyrs and murder. And then they just hacked him down right on the spot. Containing more than 1,000 years of history, I'll discover how these buildings were constructed. Isn't that extraordinary? How they've evolved and what secrets they hold. Winchester Cathedral. The longest medieval church in Britain. For centuries, Winchester was the home for royal